Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's LChat on legally protecting your online business. I'm really excited to have Jackie with Jade Oak joining us tonight. This is a really popular subject that I get asked about a lot and am not an expert in. And so when I found Jackie's site and got to know her and saw all of the awesome resources that she has on her blog, I knew that I needed to have her on an LChat so that we could pick her brain and get some of her wisdom and insights on the legal side of business. I think that's one of the scariest aspects of starting a business, or I know at least that's what was the scariest for me, was figuring out contracts and how I set up whether I go with an LLC or a sole proprietorship, and just felt lost with that side of the business. So I'm really excited to explore it more, and hopefully by the end of this LChat, you'll have a little better understanding of what you need in order to legally protect your business. But before we get started, I want to make sure that you all can see and hear me okay. Just let me know in the comments. That would be awesome. And also be sure to take a look at the Q&A section. It looks like several of you all have found it already, and we have a ton of questions, which is awesome. But there's also a feature on there that allows you to vote up questions. So if you are looking through them and you see some that you really want answered, go ahead and vote them up, because Jackie is going to answer them in order. We probably won't get to all 28 by the end of our LChat. We have an hour together, but we'll get through as many of them as we can. We'll leave about 15 or 20 minutes at the end. And yes, awesome. See and hear me. Perfect. All right. Well, with that being said, I want to introduce you to Jackie. Jackie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to share with us.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here too. So if you don't know me, my name's Jackie, and I blog at Jade Oak. I've been blogging for about 3.5, almost 4 years. So I started as more of a lifestyle blogger, just doing a little bit of everything, and didn't really know what I wanted to be blogging about. But in the last almost year or so, I've decided to really focus down, and because I'm also a lawyer, I've started to take some of that legal knowledge and apply it to blogging, and trying to help other bloggers understand the legal implications, the legal rules, different things that bloggers need to know, because I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it. And when I do see people talking about it, they might be non-lawyers or they might be lawyers, but it's kind of a short one-off post about blogging. So I wanted to start building sort of a resource library. I've been doing more posts about blogging. So yeah, so I'm excited, and there's a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to get to as many of them as I can. But yeah, I know it's a big topic now, and not a lot of people talk about it. So hopefully I can help you guys out today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Are there any disclaimers before we should get started in terms of, I know we have people, looks like tuning in from everywhere. I saw Liverpool, Tasmania, Seattle, Florida. So of course, laws are going to be different in different countries and in different states. So are there any disclaimers right off the bat before we get started?
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's one of the legal things that you need to do. But yeah, the legal disclaimer would be that this is information, and I'm going to provide you with the most accurate information that I can. But just remember that even though I'm an attorney, this isn't me acting as your attorney. So it's not legal advice. So it's just information, and this isn't like a attorney-client relationship. And then also, because I live in Pennsylvania and I'm licensed to practice law in the state of Pennsylvania, so Pennsylvania laws might be different from people in Florida or Washington State or different states, so things could vary a little bit. So I'll try to be as general as I can, and if I know, or I'll try to remember to say, it can vary by state. And then also for international, I have no idea. I mean, there's obviously a lot of countries. Every country has their own rules, their own laws, their own ways of doing things. So a lot of these things can be good common sense anyways, best practices, regardless of whether it's legal or not legal. But if you're in a different country, obviously research your rules and the laws in your country as well.
Perfect. Awesome. So with that being said, we're just going to jump right in. And Jackie, what is the difference when you're going to set up your business as a business entity? What is the difference between a sole proprietorship and an LLC?
So I'm actually a sole proprietor still because I have not set up an LLC. So the big difference is you are a sole proprietor once you have a business, basically. So if you are doing, cutting the grass and you're making money and you have expenses and you're getting paid, that sort of thing, like that's a business. And without doing anything, without filing any sort of paperwork, you are a sole proprietor. So the good thing with being a sole proprietor is you don't have to do anything. And your business name is really just your name. So you might see DBA, or doing business as. So that's where someone, they're a sole proprietor or maybe a different type of business. And the DBA is just the doing business as, if you want to kind of legally separate yourself in name. But with a sole proprietorship, the business and you are basically one. There's no legal distinction. So in the eyes of the law, which comes to liability and taxes. So first of all, when you're a sole proprietor and you make any money, you just file that with your own personal taxes whenever you file for the IRS. So that's going to be any money that you're making, any expenses, all of that. So there's some different forms. It's the Schedule C for sole proprietors. So you would put on there the money that you're making and then any expenses, and then if you suffer a loss. So all of that just goes on your regular taxes. So it's easy in that way as well. But then the other side of being a sole proprietor is the liability. So because there's no legal distinction between you and your business, if you are cutting grass and you run over someone's foot and they sue you, they are suing you personally as opposed to suing the business. So that can be a little bit scary when it comes to liability, because if you're open to liability at all, or if your business racks up a debt, it's connected to you. So the creditors, if you rack up a debt, you buy a car and it's your business car, and then you stop paying the loan. If there's a debt, they can come after you personally. So they can get your personal assets, just like if someone sued you personally. So that's where some people don't like the sole proprietorship, because you open yourself to liability. But then the other side of that is looking at what type of business you have. If you have an online business and you're blogging, or you're doing graphic design, or maybe you're a VA, I know a lot of people are doing virtual assistant type work, things like that, where you think to yourself, like, am I opening myself up to liability? Am I incurring debts that I might not be able to pay? Is someone going to sue me? That sort of thing. So that's the balance with choosing if the liability side of sole proprietorship is okay with you. And then as for an LLC, so that stands for limited liability corporation, company. I can't remember off the top of my head.
We use LLC so often.
Yeah, I think it's company. I don't remember. But it probably is, because the corporation is something separate. But the big thing with that is the limited liability. So when you are an LLC, you can still be working for yourself. You can be a one-person LLC, but there is a legal distinction between you and the company. So if you have debts, or if you are sued or something like that, they're suing the company. They're suing the LLC instead of you personally. So that's really better. Oh, did you hear that?
It's okay. It happens on mine too.
Off. I thought I turned it off. Okay, I think it's off now. Sorry. So if there's any sort of liability, it's going to the LLC. And in some cases, they can go kind of through the LLC and come after you personally, but there's kind of more limited circumstances, and that's where you're acting kind of in a different way, where the business and you don't, doesn't seem to be a distinction, but that's more of the exception. Mm-hmm. So that was long-winded, but those are kind of the main differences between LLC and sole proprietorship. Did I miss anything, or was there any other questions on that?
I think that was good. I know for me personally, I started out as a sole proprietorship probably for the first year and a half of Ellen Company. And within the last year, we've moved to an LLC just to have that protection. So that if anybody did come, if a client sued for any reason, God forbid, they wouldn't wipe out, our personal savings account and everything that we've been doing personally. It would be the business. So we liked the more protection there. there are tax differences, but we like the liability. Nobody could come after us personally.
Right, and that's the main thing. Where if you're making more money and that sort of thing, and you're opening yourself up and you're doing more business, I mean, just being more popular, having more business, there is more of a possibility. So it's that balance. And then I don't think I mentioned also with an LLC as opposed to a sole proprietorship, there are some filing requirements, so you don't just have it. So it differs by state, and in some instances you can choose a different state. So if you have a brick and mortar store, you usually have to be or have the LLC registered in the state where you're at. But if you have more of an online business, you can kind of pick and choose the state. And then as far as taxes as well, for the LLC, it has better tax benefits than a corporation. Without getting too far into it, with a corporation, there's kind of you're taxed at the corporate level, so the corporation is taxed, and then you get paid, and then the individuals are taxed. So an LLC is kind of the best of both worlds because you just get taxed individually. So when you do your LLC taxes, it's similar because you're doing it as kind of your own income as opposed to doing a business's taxes as well.
Right. Yeah, it was, I can say it was nice to move to an LLC because taxes weren't so complicated, but it was nice to have that distinction between me and Ellen Company. So
yeah, that's why a lot of people do it. So yeah, it's popular and it's a good option for a lot of people.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned this, but just to be clear on it, so how do you go about setting up each one, the sole proprietorship and the LLC?
Okay, so the sole proprietorship, like I said, you are automatically a sole proprietor once you're making money and you are, quote unquote, a business. So you don't really need to do anything. The only thing with a sole proprietorship, if you're doing certain types of business, and it can differ by state and it can differ by locality, you might need to register or have a certain license in your area. I'm not sure exactly what types of businesses, but you can just double check on your state's website or local website. And then if you want to do a doing business as, so if you want to, the sole proprietorship is your name. And if you want to have a DBA, you can register that with your state. So that's really the main things with the sole proprietorship. And as for the LLC, it differs by state. So the best thing to do is go to Google and find, your state's, what agency or what government agency or office they use. It could be a Secretary of State. It could be a local office in your county or something. So that's kind of hard because I was looking for a website that had a list of the links for everything. I wasn't able to find it yet. If anyone knows of a website, we can add that. But if I find one, I'm going to add it to, I think there's a resource link.
Yes.
In the chat there. So I was searching. I didn't find anything right away, but it can be different by every state. So
yeah,
50 states to look at, unfortunately.
Yeah, maybe that's a blog post or something. You could be the list or the resource.
That would be a good idea. I could sit there and because it's so different in every state. So it's hard to have a blanket answer. But and then different states have different requirements once you are an LLC about I think it's operating agreement and just different filings and that sort of thing. And some of them make you publish when you become an LLC. So all of that is good to, check out your state's website and see if they have more information.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So like Jackie said, and I meant to mention this earlier, and I'll probably mention it a few more times, but right underneath this window, there's a button that says resource links. So if you click that, Jackie has gone ahead and set up a page on her website with tons of resources about what we're talking about and more information. So be sure to check that out after the LChat is over today and bookmark it. It'll be helpful for you to return back to. But yes, like she said, go and figure out what the requirements are per state, whatever state you're in or country you're in, because I know everyone's tuning in from all over. And Jackie, we talked about this. We mentioned it briefly before we started broadcasting live, but I know that a lot of people, when they're looking around for options for setting up their LLC, if they're going that route, a lot of people will ask about LegalZoom because it's a little bit cheaper than working with a lawyer because it can get pricey. What do you recommend, or what are your thoughts on that?
So I keep meaning to look into LegalZoom because I've gotten this question before too from people asking me if I think it's a good idea. I haven't specifically looked at LegalZoom, and so I don't really know the exact services they offer. From what I think, just from what I've heard, it seems like they kind of offer some general legal information, and then if you might need something specific or you need advice, they put you in touch with a lawyer. So I don't know if if that's in kind of the pricing or if that's an upgrade or something like that, because I know they have lawyers in different states, so they'll have to find someone in your state. So I'm not really sure. I know it's popular. I know a lot of people use it for a lot of things. So it could be an option. You could always look into it or ask around. I'm actually interested if anyone's used LegalZoom for anything, if you can like let us know or send me an email or something, because I would love to get like take a poll of people and see like how their results have been. But as far as, I guess it also depends. If you want to set up an LLC, you can always look to find local lawyers in your area. And I know people hesitate to hire attorneys because it can be expensive, but there's a lot of attorneys who specialize in helping small businesses, and their rates might not be as big as, you know, if you go downtown into the big skyscrapers and that sort of thing. And I believe that some local law schools, maybe colleges, they might have small business programs, or maybe business schools too. And you can always check that out, because I believe where I live in Pittsburgh, I think they have sometimes the business school has seminars for small business owners and that sort of thing. So there might be a resource there where they could either help you write something or help put you in touch with a local attorney. So that's like always a good idea too.
That's really good advice. I know too, I'm looking in the comments right now, Andrea says she's used Rocket Lawyer. I haven't heard of her. She's really helpful. So yeah, so if you all have any other resources that you've used, feel free to post them in the comments. We would love to see that. And M asks if there's going to be a replay. Yes, all of the LChat replays can be found on the Ellen Company website, so be sure to check that out. You can refer back to this again and again, so you don't have to hurt your hand with taking notes. I know too, for myself, my husband did a little bit of research, and I live in the Charlotte area, Charlotte, North Carolina, and so he found a lawyer who specialized in creative small businesses, which was perfect for us. And so we hired him. It was a little bit of an investment, but we knew that he would only have to write up our contracts once or work with our LLC once, and hopefully privacy policy, things like that. And it was crazy, and I was telling Jackie this before we jumped on, because it wasn't even a week later, I kid you not, that we found at least 2 or 3 other websites and businesses either reselling our printables, copying content from our website, or even copying some brands that I had designed. And so it was really great to be able to have a lawyer to go to and say, what do we do? And where do we go from here? And should we worry about this? And just have that counsel. So, so I understand everybody's budget is a little bit differently, but it's really been helpful for us. So just my 2 cents on the matter, Jackie.
Really good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are afraid to get lawyers, and it can be expensive, but it's just a balance of, it can be an investment up front, and then hopefully you never need a lawyer again. I mean, lawyers are those people that you hope you don't need. You don't want to have to be visiting your lawyer. So, just like anything else, they can kind of get you set up. And I think we talked about this too, like the difference between DIY and DIY a lot of things, and maybe a DIY birthday cake is okay, but DIY kitchen, if you're not handy, or a DIY contract or LLC, if you aren't super familiar with legal stuff, it might not be worth it. And another thing I was saying earlier was that sometimes DIYing stuff can take longer because you're teaching yourself how to do it, and then you're doing it slower and maybe not as well as someone who's professional. So something legal, I mean, when I research stuff, it takes me a while to find what the best method is for something. So I think it's a balance. So, but if you're, starting out, you can always be a sole proprietor for a while. And then when you're ready and you start making money or start learning more about what your business, what direction you're going to go in, you can always then switch to an LLC. So that's something I didn't mention before. You don't have to choose today and like, that's it. So that's always a good option too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what would you say when you come across or when you're talking to other business owners, what are the most common mistakes you see being made by small businesses when it comes to the legal side of their business?
Okay, so I think one of the big things is money, because obviously we're in business to make money, and you can get really excited and you jump in and, oh, I'm only making $50 here, I'm making $100 there, and you think, oh, I'll start keeping track or I'll worry about it later. I think it's important today, you know, if you're making $0 right now, I think it's still important to start a spreadsheet, or I know there's a lot of accounting softwares like FreshBooks and different things, which I haven't used, but a lot of people have great results with that. So I think keeping track today is really important, because if you're making money, you have to pay taxes. So that's important, because you don't want to get caught on that. But it's also, if you are not really making money, but you're in business and you're, you know, not losing money, but you have expenses, first year startup costs, things like legal services, you know, buying products, if you're selling something, you know, and any sort of investment, a lot of those things can be written off on your taxes, because those are business expenses. So if you're not keeping track and, you know, you make $1,000, but you spent $2,000 this year, you know, you can actually take a loss and it can affect you, and you can pay less money in taxes. So there's different situations, but I think it's important to keep track of the money, because it can save you money. And if you don't pay your taxes, it can, you know, you can be losing money if they come after you later. So that's the number one thing I would say is money.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I know from personal experience, I use QuickBooks. Some of the times I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I probably need to meet with my accountant and have like a full lesson on QuickBooks. But I can say it was really helpful just keeping track of all the expenses and knowing where each dollar is going. My accountant appreciated come tax time, and I could just send her, I could actually add her into my QuickBooks account, and she could take it from there. So that was
that's good.
Yeah. I've heard FreshBooks is also really helpful too, but
I've heard different ones. It's like I hear them advertised on podcasts. So
yes,
I haven't tried any of them yet. I am like a crazy Excel spreadsheet person. So, and things haven't gotten too complicated yet. So I'm sticking with the Excel spreadsheet. So if you don't want to invest, you can also just use an Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
Money coming in, money coming out. And then you can just see a picture and keep receipts for purchases if you need to refer back to them. So
yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, QuickBooks isn't free, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Is a much better option for just starting out. What are some more mistakes that you see people making?
Okay, so another thing, and this is more for bloggers, which I mean, I talk a little bit more about that, but it can apply obviously to business owners. But a big thing is sponsored posts, and I think we're seeing more of that lately. Not a crackdown yet, but so many people do sponsored posts, and celebrities, and everyone is sponsored by somebody.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important. I wrote a blog post about this, I think it was this week. I don't even know what day it is. But just talking about sponsored posts, and in the US, the FTC, which is Federal Trade Commission, they have rules about what you can do as far as working with brands, if you're getting free stuff, if you're doing a review in exchange for free products, or in exchange for money, if you have affiliate links, all of those things where you have some sort of monetary interest with who you're promoting or talking about. And you have to be really clear about being upfront with people, saying that this is sponsored, I received compensation, I received something free, that's why I provided this review. All of those sorts of things, because just with online stuff, it's changing so much. And I think, you know, obviously commercials on TV, we understand that those are endorsements, you know, if you see a basketball player. But then you're getting on Twitter and you're seeing celebrities and they're saying, I love this, you know, milkshake. And it's like, or did they really love it, or did someone pay them to say it? And you would want to know that. You want to know if someone says, like, this is my favorite makeup, if they're getting paid to say that, or if they just want to say it because they really like it, like a celebrity. So it's the same thing with bloggers and business owners. So I think that's a big thing. So I feel like that might change. Like they might start to pay more attention to that because people are making a lot of money. Affiliate links, lots of things, and you just need to disclose it is the main rule. But yeah, so be careful with that one as too.
I had someone email me just this week asking about affiliate links. So that's good to know. Is it okay to have like a star next to affiliate links and have like a disclaimer at the bottom, or should you just say it right off the bat just to be sure you're covering yourself?
I mean, the rule is that it should be clear and conspicuous. So for the most part, if it's a whole sponsored post, you need to put it right at the top. If it is if it's a list of my favorite makeup products or something, and you have like several affiliate links, I would say at the beginning, I have several affiliate links. They're denoted by a star, something like that, because they don't want you to just throw it in at the bottom, because what if someone clicks away from your page in the middle? So it's just supposed to be clear and conspicuous. It can't be in teeny tiny writing like at the bottom of the page or hidden on, a lot of people, you can still put it on your about page, have separate disclosure policy saying, I do get, do reviews and this sort of thing. You should still specifically denote every time you do it. So
yeah, really good to know. I've definitely seen that happening a lot too.
Yeah.
So what about mailing lists? Because everyone seems to be putting more emphasis on mailing lists, but what should we know on the legal side about mailing lists and newsletters?
Okay, so the law in the U.S. is more based on an opt-out type law. So that means that technically you could add people to your list, but you shouldn't. But the main thing is they want to, people need to easily be able to opt out. So you can't be sending emails to people and there's no unsubscribe or opt out button, because they need to be able to opt out. Now, some other countries, they need an affirmative opt in. So those are the countries where, you can't just add someone to your email list. That's why it's just better to not ever do that unless they affirmatively agree, they get a pop-up, sign up for this freebie, you're going to be on my email list, that sort of thing. I think Canada is like a double opt-in where they sign up and then they have to, they get an email and they have to confirm that they signed up. So you can always do a double opt-in because then you're kind of safe on that end as well. But so the big thing is letting people unsubscribe and actually unsubscribing them. So, and as far as, sharing email lists or buying emails, it's a bad idea as well, because what if you got this person on your email list, they opted out, and then you buy their email address, or you're sharing emails with someone and you add them back to your list. They've already opted out. So there's a lot of that. I mean, the law in the U.S. is called the CAN-SPAM, which I cannot remember what it stands for. It's a really long acronym, but and it's basically they don't want you to be spam. They don't want people getting spam. People get a ton of stuff in their email, and they don't, they want to let people opt out. And then the other requirement, at least in the U.S., is that you need to have an address at the bottom of every email. So I got a P.O. box because I didn't want my home address on there. If you have a business address, you can use that, but you can also use a P.O. box. I know a lot of people don't. It's another expense. I think I paid like $43 for 6 months. I don't know if it's the same price in every state or city, but I figured I'd rather do that and comply with the law, but not have my home address out there. And again, they want that address there to kind of help ensure that you're not spam, because spammers aren't going to put their address in there, obviously. And then the other big thing with emails is just you can't be, it has to be very clear, and it has to be, you can't be lying and saying crazy things in it, which is, common sense. You can't say, you've won $1 million just to get people to open the emails. You can't have it like hide your name or your email address or something like that as well. So you just have to be clear and upfront with everything.
Yeah.
Those are the main things.
Don't be sketchy or spammy. Something that I've found helpful too, especially with LChats. So anybody who registers for an LChat, instead of just adding them to my list automatically, I And all of you all tuning in probably saw this. If you aren't a part of the list already, it'll say, if you enjoyed this LChat, you might also enjoy the weekly tips that I send out every week in my newsletter. And so you can subscribe here. So things like that, and I set that up in ConvertKit. It was really easy, but you weren't automatically a part of my list, but it was an opportunity for me to say, do you want to be a part of my list?
Right. Yeah. So I think it's just being careful with people understand. I think a lot of people understand when they sign up for stuff now, they're going to be on someone's list. But the best thing is, like, you just need to let them opt out if they want to. So that's the big part.
Yeah. Good. That is really good to know. All right. So what are the essentials? I mentioned this a little while ago when I talked about people stealing things off of my website. So any of the original content, like blog posts and infographics or any of that kind of thing, how do you go about protecting the original content on your website?
Okay, so at least in the US, your content is automatically copyrighted. So once it's created and it's out in the world and kind of published, it's automatically copyrighted. So it's still a good idea to include somewhere on your website that your work is copyrighted, and you can do that by just doing the little C symbol, like the C in the circle symbol, or you can just write copyright and the date. It's supposed to be the date of first publication, but you can kind of, if you've had your website for a couple of years, you can just include a range of dates and then your name or your business name. So I include that at the bottom of, like in the footer of my blog. So that's the easiest place. And then you can have a statement somewhere on your blog. So even though your work is copyrighted, you might be okay with people using it to a certain extent. If people are going to link back to you, or they're, maybe going to do a roundup post and they're going to post a link to your blog post, but they might also, post a link with your image just to, make it look a certain way. So you might say something, all this work is mine, it's copyrighted and it's my property, but I'm, if you attribute things to me, I'm okay with you sharing things, that sort of thing. Because basically, what it is, if someone's like using someone else's work, it could be under a license. So without getting too far into that, but there's like the Creative Commons license. If you go on Flickr, you'll see some work that's like under the Creative Commons license, which is basically saying, I own this work, but it's kind of an open source, like other people are allowed to use it. So decide what you're okay with people using. If you are a graphic designer and you want people to download your stuff and, they're allowed to use it, but it's only for, personal use, or they're allowed to use it on their blog, but they can't sell it, anything like that, just lay it out. So that's you saying what you're okay with people using. Now, that doesn't necessarily stop anyone from doing whatever they want, obviously. It's on the internet. If they can save it and they can, like what happened to you, people can, they probably knew that it was yours, even though you didn't, whether or not you said, this is my copyrighted product. So once it gets to that point where someone takes your work, there's a couple avenues. You can always ask them nicely. That's a good way to start. And then you can involve an attorney who will write a letter to them, like a cease and desist type letter. I don't know if that's what happened in your situation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. It's hard. The internet's great, but it can also be bad because people can steal things, and it can be hard to stop them. But the first line of defense is just letting people know that the work is copyrighted. If they ask your permission, they can reprint it or something like that. So,
yeah, a lot of times, yeah, but I usually try to start by asking someone nicely, and usually that does the trick before ever having to contact a lawyer. And it depends on what it is too, the extent of it. So
yeah, sometimes people might use something and they don't realize they're like stealing work. They think they've given you credit or something, and they might be oblivious. And if you mention it to them, they'll be happy to take it down or at least put a link back to you or something like that. So some people it is innocent, but I mean, the people who are purposely stealing it, you might have a problem with, obviously.
Yes, so. Absolutely. That's good insight. So the copyright at the bottom of your site, and then also a privacy policy. What's the difference between a privacy policy and terms and conditions? Do you need to have both? That might be a silly question, but it goes to show the extent of my legal knowledge.
I think that's a good question because the privacy policy is something you need if you collect any sort of information about people, any personal information. And if you have a blog or website, you probably do collect personal information from people, not even thinking about it. If people leave a blog comment, they're leaving their email address and their name and that sort of thing. And then most websites have cookies, and that is, kind of working with the back end of people's computers. I have no idea really what cookies do, but you need to let people know that, because the cookies can be collecting data, and that's for your Google Analytics. If you have Google Analytics, you're collecting people's data. Not you personally, but you can see it. You can see where people are from, maybe not like specifics. You can see countries, and you can see sometimes demographics, male, female, age, that sort of thing. So if you're collecting data, which you probably are, you need a privacy statement. And privacy statement, it's good because it tells them, it kind of puts people at ease. You're telling them, I'm not taking your private data and selling it to people, or I'm not collecting, your credit card information, which you shouldn't be doing those things, but you're putting it out there saying, like, I only collect data for like Google Analytics purposes. And then it kind of puts them at ease because they know that you shouldn't be collecting that data and that you aren't. So it's good because it should be kind of obvious, but it shows that you understand that you should have a privacy statement. You have it, and you're following kind of general rules going with that. And then the terms and conditions can kind of be like the rules of your blog or your website. So you can say anything about, we're not going to tolerate people leaving obscene comments, and, if you steal this work or steal my work, that's not okay, and that sort of thing. So it's the rules of your blog, sort of how you expect people to act and how you treat them in return. So it can encompass a lot of things, saying like, I won't add you to my email list without your permission. If you leave a comment, I have the right to, take a screenshot of it and post it on my blog because it's like a really interesting comment that other people could use. So, because basically, kind of going back to that copyright thing, when someone leaves a comment on your blog, it can technically be their property, and they're kind of giving you a license to use it. So when you put it in your terms and conditions, you're telling them, by coming here and you writing this, you're giving me kind of an implicit license to refer back to your content or your comment. So your terms and conditions can include a lot of different things, but it's just the rules. So it's not as mandatory as the privacy statement, but it's a good idea to have. And again, I think once you want to have a professional business, it's a good idea to understand those kinds of clauses and statements and have ones that are tailored to your business. So it just makes you look more professional and know what you're doing, and you're wanting to protect everyone that's coming to your site.
Yeah, and protect yourself just in case you get a crazy person and you can say, well, here I said it in my privacy policy or my terms and conditions that you can't make those kinds of comments, so I had to remove it, or just be prepared.
It's good to have that.
Yeah, and I found that with client contracts too, which we're moving into talking about contracts. That it's not necessarily, it's good right off the bat to set expectations when you have them sign it, but it's also really good to come back to in case you have an issue and you have already outlined it or already thought about that. A lot of things that I didn't think I needed to include in my contract, I ended up being thankful that I included in my contract. So how do you go about setting up a client contract? What do you suggest for where to start and kind of what to include?
So, like you said, the good thing with contracts is, number one, it's setting up expectations kind of beforehand. And so everyone knows, you're telling them what work you're going to be doing, the scope of work, the time frame, the money, all of that sort of thing. And then it's also good kind of retroactively. If a problem comes up, hopefully you've already addressed it in your contract. And then that can alleviate a lot of issues, because if the person forgot and they thought you said, oh, you were gonna have it to them on the 1st, and the contract actually said you were gonna have it to them on the 15th, you can say, oh, look at the contract. And then there's no fight because it's in writing. They signed it or agreed to it, and you both agreed to it. So that's a nice thing about the contract. And as far as setting one up, I mean, it's up to you. There's a lot of options. You can write your own contract. You can get an attorney. You can use a legal template. You can do something like LegalZoom. So there's a lot of options. But the main things I would say you should worry about are protecting your work and protecting your money or getting paid. Because if you're a designer or something like that, you want to know that, you might give them all the rights to the work. They can do whatever they want with it. They can manipulate it, they can resell it or whatever. Or you could say, you can use this for this business, for these purposes, but you can't, alter this logo and make it into a new logo and sell it yourself. You might want to say something like, I'm going to give you the rights to everything. You have all the files, but I'm going to include it in my portfolio, because sometimes people don't realize that. And I think it's important to put that up front because it's your work, and you might not want them altering it and keeping your name on it if you don't like the way it looks now, and you don't want them selling it, but you also want to help for your portfolio. And as far as getting paid, it's important to understand the terms of payment. Is it going to be PayPal? Is it going to be Stripe? Is it going to be some other method? When are they going to pay? Would you want them to pay 100% up front? Is it 50% up front, 50% this day? That sort of thing. So just think of basically all the situations that could go wrong. So what I tell people with contracts is like, look at the nightmare situations.
Yeah.
Hopefully those don't happen. But honestly, think of the worst things that could happen. They're not going to pay me, or I'm going to be 90% done and they're going to tell me never mind. I never got paid, or they won't pay the final bill, or anything. I know a lot of people have said that they have trouble getting paid. And just how can you set up a system where you're protecting yourself, because you're putting all this work in and you want to get paid, but you want to, protect your work and all of that. So think about like the what ifs. What if like the person gets sick and they can't pay me, or what if I get sick and I can't finish the work? Anything like that. I mean, you can go down to really nitty-gritty details if you really want to protect yourself. And I think the higher the stakes, probably you want to dig into that more. If you're doing a small project for a friend or someone you can have a little more leeway. So yeah, with contracts, they can run the gamut of, I can send you an email and say, do you want to work together? Like, we'll do this webinar, and it could be really low key, or it could be, something for thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. You just have to decide like what's right for your situation in your business and the likelihood of problems coming up as well.
Yeah, that was another, I keep saying this, but it was another really helpful part of meeting with a lawyer, for him to say, well, how do you handle payments? And just asking questions, because he knew more of what to look for. And then what he did was write a contract, and because I work with coaching clients and design clients, he included a statement of work at the end. So the contract wouldn't change, but the statement of work portion of it would, where I'd say, here's how much I'm charging. Like, here's what the client needs to do on their end, and here's what I need to do on my end, what I'm going to be delivering. And that was really helpful. So I didn't have to have multiple contracts. I could have one, like a statement of work, which was really, really helpful.
I think most people can have a standard contract, unless they're doing totally different types of work. But having a standard contract, and then you're going to have to personalize it and customize it for each project, probably, and each person. And the other person might not be okay with one term of your contract, but it's a back and forth until you come to an agreement. And it's really not about trying to like get your terms in more than the other person. It's about coming to a mutual agreement so you're both on the same page. And I think contracts is like a meeting of the minds. So it is coming to that kind of mutual agreement. So
yeah, and protecting them just as much as protecting yourself, because you're outlining everything in there too. I thought I would scare people away with a multi-page contract, but actually I've been surprised. All my clients read through it, ask for more questions on things. I think it sets them more at ease, because I've thought through some of these things already, and they know what to expect too. So
Yeah, definitely. And then they know if they, if you didn't have it outlined, they might not even think about, different aspects of it. And now they're thinking about it and they're like, oh,
Mhm.
that's great. Like, I didn't know you were going to do X, Y, and Z, or, you're going to do these two things, but what about this? And you might be fine with adding something or not. So it's good it opens up the question so everyone is on the same page and like
Yeah,
thinking about the same things. Yeah.
yeah, I love that. That's a great point. All right, are we ready to start with questions?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see how many of these we can get through.
Okay.
Currently 28. So, all right. Megan asks, say I am starting entirely from scratch to make a blog into my business. What steps do I need to take legally before I monetize and make it into an income with the intention of creating sellable content such as courses, ebooks, etc.? So
Okay.
we're start.
Yeah, I would say if you're starting from scratch, like you have a blog, but it's not a business yet. Um, you're a sole proprietor if you're making any money, so you can start and stay a sole proprietor. If you want your DBA, like your doing business name or doing business as name, to be your blog name or a different name, you can certainly file that. You can just check with your state and see what their rules are for filing, and then go from there. And then you can consider, obviously keeping track of money is important. So money coming in, money coming out. You can consider, either getting an accounting software. I didn't mention this earlier, but you can also get a business account if you want to keep everything really separate, just a business checking account. You might be able to get a business credit card if you have different expenses like that. So it really depends on if you think you need that. So yeah, just keeping track of all of that, I think, is the most important thing. And then if you start as a sole proprietor and then you want to become an LLC down the line, those are the options you can start thinking about. So, if you are starting to get serious now, you can always talk to an accountant, you can always talk to a lawyer, but just kind of see what's out there. And like, as you build your business, I think a lot of people think you have to have everything set up, and you might for certain types of businesses, but if it's online, you can kind of grow with the business and add different aspects as you go.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. All right, Megan, hope that was helpful for you. Start with just the DBA and build from there. And then, of course, like we talked about too, I'm guessing, Jackie, privacy policy, if you're
Right.
taking email addresses and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and then doing as far as like the blogging side of things, make sure your blog is set up with all of those different statements, like sponsored posts, like know about disclosures, do the privacy, do the terms and conditions, and then obviously make sure that your email address or your email list is set up correctly as well.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Next question is from Starla, and she says, when creating an online empire, should you have one umbrella company registered as an LLC? She says she's a blogger, vlogger. She has 2 online shops, 1 event company, 2 creative service companies. She must be really busy. She said, can I register them all under one LLC? And if so, how do I do that?
So I was looking into this one because I was not exactly sure, but I think the best practice would be, if they're separate businesses, that makes sense. You can have them separate. So you can have different DBAs or different LLCs under an umbrella LLC. So a good thing is if you just have several like sole proprietorships under the umbrella of an LLC, it can work if, again, it would be good as a sole proprietorship because, if you aren't going to be open to too much liability and that sort of thing. But if one of the businesses has more liability than another one, it might make sense for maybe one of them to be an LLC on its own, because if you're all kind of under an umbrella LLC and something happens, it can kind of eat into the profits or the money of the rest of them. So I think it's just looking at the types of businesses and seeing how much they might kind of affect each other, because having one umbrella LLC is nice because it's, a lot easier than having a million of them. But I think it's just that balance of if you have a bunch of different businesses, is one going to have a problem that might affect the other ones.
Mm.
So it's definitely something you can do. It's just looking at if it's right for all those specific businesses. You could always split them up, you know, do a couple under the umbrella LLC. Just looking at the tax consequences of which ones, you know, which ones are making more money and that sort of thing. So not super specific, but I mean, you can do it. It's just looking at your situation, figuring out what's best.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yes, great. Thank you, Starla. Sorry, I was seeing if we had answered it all. All right. So the next one is from Jill. And Jill says, what is the importance of trademarking something? When should you do it and when shouldn't you? This is a great question. So what is a trademark? We should probably start there.
Yeah, so with trademarks, it's interesting, like your name, as long as no one else is really using it, which it's hard to tell, but it's the same thing where you can trademark your name right now. So if you have an e-course or if you have a book, you can just put the little TM up in the corner. So that's you saying to the world, I'm saying this is, you know, my product, this is my name, or the name of my business, the name of my book. And you're kind of putting it out there into the world. You're putting other people on notice that you are claiming that trademark. The difference is if you ever see that little R in a circle, that's a registered trademark. So that's where the difference is. So that is someone went to the trademark office and filed all the paperwork, which I don't really know the whole process of that, but obviously that's a little more in depth. It's going to the federal government and getting a trademark there. So they, you know, that's a little bit more rigorous. So the big thing with trademarks is whenever you're talking about another company, putting that trademark in there shows that you recognize that it's a trademarked company and that you aren't trying to say, I am Pepsi, you know, whenever I'm talking, I'm not trying to say like, I'm Pepsi or something like that. So, but as far as if you have things now and you can put that little TM in there, and that's just putting everyone else on notice that you are claiming that trademark. And then if it's something that gets bigger, or if you're having issues or you think it might be stolen or something like that, you can always look into doing a registered trademark. And then I'm going to make a note to get the trademark website added to that list.
Thank you.
And then there's some good information on there as well.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that. Can't too, because I talked to my lawyer about doing this with registering a trademark. Can't it get really expensive and the process be really long for registering it too?
Yes, and it's interesting because you can like bundle the works together sometimes. I mean, you basically, like if you wrote a book or you had music or something, you have to like send it to them. And they have to kind of, I don't know what their process is exactly. So, you know, like works of art or something, you might be able to say like these 4 paintings and they can take those together and like look at them. But I'm not really sure how they would do something like a website because it's always changing and like do you send them a printout of all your blog posts? I can't even imagine. So I don't know, like something like that, but as opposed to like something more tangible like a book, or even an e-course where you have like a finite amount of documents. But yeah, it can get expensive in the filing fees and it can take a while. So I think you'll notice and then start looking around because when you'll see a lot of people have the TM and not a ton of people have the R because it's a big pain. But you see the TM and you think like, oh, okay, that's like legit. So, I mean, putting it in there because you're claiming it. And then if someone comes back and says, you know, 5 years from now, like, oh, this is mine. Well, I've been using, you know, the TM on my business name for 5 years. And just because it's not registered, like, I'm kind of affirmatively saying, like, putting myself out there with it. So.
Right. I know you might laugh at this, one of the funny things, my lawyer we were asking about trademarks and our logo in particular. And he was talking about how you can have the TM. And as a graphic designer, I was like, I just don't want the TM next to my logo. And so what we did, and if you go to the Ellen Company website and you look at the bottom, it ends up saying Ellen Company and its logos are trademarks of Ellen Company, which was, I'm guessing that's an okay thing to do since he recommended it. But
yeah, I mean, that's a way to get around it. it's all about kind of like putting other people on notice. So the
Right.
TM is right in the middle so you can see it. But yeah, like no one wants to have that like in their logo. So
Yeah. That was my like personal, it's silly. People probably wouldn't even notice, but to me, it was, yeah. Anyway, great question, Jill, and thank you. Thank you for covering that. And Lauren, the next question that had the most votes was also about trademarking names in e-courses, and we kind of covered that already, so I'm going to keep moving. And we also talked about setting up a sole proprietor and LLC and kind of how that affects taxes. Jackie, is that something that we could go into more detail on, or?
I mean, the main thing is for both of them, you're going to basically do your taxes with your personal taxes. So the one thing, which I didn't really get into with an LLC, and I'll just do quickly, is since an LLC, it's like not really seen as a separate legal entity because you're the one getting taxed. It's just kind of like a shelter. I don't say shelter, but it's just separate as far as like the legal liability. But as far as like a tax entity, it's you. So for both of them, you file with yourself or with your personal taxes. But with an LLC, you can choose to file your LLC as a sole proprietorship, a corporation, or an S corp. And so there's advantages to like all of those things. But it's similar in the fact that the money goes through the company and then it gets taxed to you, as opposed to it gets taxed at the company level and then it gets taxed to you. And then with an S corp is like an election you make, and there's just another form you fill out, of course, because it's a million forms. But you fill out another form, and that changes some tax liabilities as well. The main thing is with the S corp, it's the difference between you getting wages, which are taxed, and then you getting dividends of like the corporation, which is, so that changes the tax liability. So, but otherwise, they're pretty similar. So,
yeah,
doing them with your personal taxes.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. That was a good question. I know, too, for some of you might be hearing S Corp and LLC and sole proprietorship, and it might sound a little overwhelming, and I can totally relate to that. I admire what Jackie does, and I could not do it. However, I've seen from experience of just, and this goes for any aspect of your business, accounting, the legal side, any of it, just becoming a student of your field and just trying to ask a bunch of questions, try to wrap your mind around it. Go to those resource links that Jackie has given you too, so that you can learn more about it. But it's better safe than sorry. And now talking to Jackie, I kind of know just from picking my lawyer's brain a little bit more about it too. So the more and more that you're around it, the less intimidating it might get.
Right.
But yeah, just wanted to put that in there. I think we have time to answer one more. Are you up for one more, Jackie?
Yeah, okay.
So Tanya asks, my hobby of photography is getting more and more like a side business, and I'd like to protect myself legally, financially, and move toward making it more official. I'm just not sure where to start. I've been using a business name for a few years and reported to my taxes. I'm still working on a hobby level budget, and I know I need to start looking into insurance contracts, business licensing. I'm just lost on what's the most important and where to start. So this is kind of similar, but bare bones. I know we talked about blogging, but what about for a hobby or side business?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a post that is linked up in there. It's talking about is your business, or it says is your blog a hobby or a business? And kind of the difference there is if it's a hobby, you don't have to, if you are making any money, you don't have to pay any taxes, but you also don't get to write off any expenses. So, and then once it's a business, you have to pay taxes, but you get to write off expenses. So it's a difference. I think a lot of people are hobby bloggers or photographers or something like that. And so you don't really worry about the tax issues, but once you start making a little bit more money, I think the threshold is like $400 with filing with IRS. You want to start looking into that. So I would say if, she wants to turn it more into a business. I mean, I'm not sure about insurance exactly for photographers, what type of insurance that would be. I guess that would be more so like people suing her, for whatever reason, if they don't get their pictures or they change their mind or something, like break a contract. So I'm not sure about insurance for something like that. But if she was an LLC, that could protect some some of her personal assets, because it would be just going after the business. And then as far as contracts, I think, you can always, again, there's options. You can DIY, you can look at templates online, you can talk to a lawyer, you can talk to friends. I think once you get into more official type work where, if you're a photographer, you're working with brides, like someone's wedding, and they're paying you like thousands of dollars, you might want to get a pretty serious contract in place. But again, like we said, just do it once and you should be good for a long time unless you ever have an issue. Because that's important, just setting up expectations, and then when you're going to get paid, and when they're going to get their pictures, and when, what if they cancel, what if it rains, what if you get sick, all those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. So I think, the contract aspect of it is important. And then maybe considering, if she's thinking about insurance, if there's some liability questions, I would say maybe look at an LLC and then just see if that would help protect her on that side of things. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. These are all great questions, guys. I'm sorry that we weren't able to answer them. I think we would have been here a good portion of the night if we kept going. But I hope that through our time that you were able to take a lot away and be able to kind of decide whether you need to go the LLC route, what you need in your contract, privacy policy, terms and conditions. Please be sure to check out that link. It says resource links. It'll take you right to Jackie's site, Jade Oak. She took the time, which was really, really kind and thoughtful, to put a ton of links there for things that we've talked about, whether it's to posts, other links off of her website, just to help you out. So please be sure to check that out, and just go and check Jackie's site and read her blog and see all the great resources she has to offer. Jackie, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us tonight and kind of set us at ease about all the legal part.
So sometimes I'm always like, am I opening a can of worms, and am I going to scare people? And I think it's not about being scared, because it can be intimidating. I think it's about knowledge is power and everything, and just knowing a little bit about something, because then you know who to ask, the right questions to ask. And, you're never going to learn everything about the law. I think no lawyer knows everything about the law, but it's just like understanding kind of the basics and knowing like who to go to for help and that sort of thing. So I think that's the most important thing. So don't be scared. Sorry.
No, I'm just speaking for myself here, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Sure, it was fun. So I hope it helped everyone. I know we didn't have a lot of time, but I think a lot of what we talked about at least touched on some of what was in the questions. Mm-hmm. So hopefully, and then if you have other questions, if you guys want to email me or something like that, my email information is on the website, and then maybe I can get to that as well. So
yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Jackie.
Okay.
And thank you guys for joining in tonight. I really appreciate it. Next week, I'll have details about upcoming LChats coming up. Usually they're at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But like we said, Jackie's an attorney and works the day job, so we wanted to have her on and account for that. I hope that you all enjoyed this time, and I hope to see you in another LChat sometime soon. Have a great long Memorial Day weekend. And
yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, well, in the States, 3-day weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you guys, and have a good one. See you later.
Okay, thanks. Bye.